Hello, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Star Trek Picard, Season 1, Episode 2, Maps and Legends. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek Picard. So I have to start with a spoiler warning for Picard up to Season 1, Episode 2. So, this is pretty obviously a sort of link in a chain type episode, a setup episode, a build-up episode, nothing spectacular about this episode in and on itself, except that you can tell that it's part of a whole, that it's setting the stage, it's getting things going. Now, I'm continuing to be impressed with this show. I was maybe a little less impressed with this episode than I was the first episode. I loved, if you didn't see my review of the first episode, I loved it. I thought it was one of the best, series premieres I've ever seen, best first episodes of a new show that I've ever seen. Now, I went online, which is of course a huge mistake, although you're online right now, so maybe I shouldn't say that. But anyway, I went online and looked at some of the reviews, and of course not everyone was as pleased as I was. I mean, there was a whole bunch of people who were just as pleased as I was, but there were others who kind of had their little faults here and there, and that's all good. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. There's some people who outright hated the episode, and again, that's fine if you do that. I personally didn't, but that's your opinion. But what nagged at me, what bothered me, is there's certain people who, it seems like they're looking for things to dislike. Like they already convinced themselves before the show even came on that it was going to suck. So when they're watching it, they're just wanting to reaffirm the opinion that they already made. And I never try to do that personally. Never. And I don't want to put words in anyone's mouths, but there were certain of the more negative reviews, Red Letter Media, excuse me, that I could tell were doing that because if you don't like the episode, you don't like the show, that's fine. You're welcome to your opinion. Everyone has that opinion, but they would say things that were factually not true. It's like when you describe the plot, it says person A goes to place B and they do thing C. And yet, certain in these reviews, they would say that, but that's actually not true. It was person B who went to place D and did C thing F. So they were factually incorrect. And they were saying, oh, this isn't like Star Trek because of this. But actually, no, it is because of Star Trek because of that. They completely got their facts wrong. If you want to hate the episode, that's fine, but don't misconstrue or misunderstand or present the plot or the show or the actual story as something that it's not. That, my friends, is called a straw man. So I saw a lot of these straw man reviews that were hating it for reasons that don't actually exist. But, that's fine. People do what they want to do. I personally, as I said, everyone's entitled to like or dislike the show on there. Some people would say, oh, I thought the dialogue was poorly written. That's fine. That's your opinion. I personally did not feel that way. I thought the dialogue was fine. I didn't have anything against it, but that's a matter of opinion. But certain things you say, oh, I didn't like the fact that this and this and this, but actually that didn't happen, or you misunderstood it. Then, yeah, it's a bit less valid in my opinion. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, let me get to this episode, which is what I'm here to do. Now, I actually had a few nitpicks with this episode personally. Now, I guess I'll start with those because I like this episode overall. But the thing where I didn't like the part where Picard was talking to his Romulan buddy, and sorry, I still don't have their names yet. And he was like, oh, you need friends, you need help, so you should get Worf and LaForge and Riker. And Picard's like, no, I don't want to drag them into this and trouble them anymore, so I'm going to call someone who hates me. So he calls up this person we, of course, never heard of before, but they're going to be a main character on the show. And Picard shows up there, and they're pointing a gun at him. And they're like, turn around and go the way you came. Picard's like, oh yeah, but there's a secret Romulan organization trying to kill androids. She's like, fuck, I gotta help. That's, I talked about in the first episode how it felt natural. That's why I loved it as a first episode of the show didn't see like, oh, here's a character here and here's a character there, and oh, look at that character. This is going to be a main character. It didn't feel like that. This does. This totally feels like a very contrived way to introduce a new character into the show. The whole way they're like, oh no, I'm going to have to help you now. No, I hate you for reasons. Of course, we don't know because they're just inventing backstories that happen in between shows, which, don't get me wrong. A lot of it I'm fine with. Like, I love the history of the Mars thing and the Romulan thing and stuff like that. I have no issues of. But when they do specific character beats and they expect us to care about this character for reasons that they just invented that we actually personally don't know about, then it doesn't work as well for me. And plus, the whole thing about this Romulan buddy saying, oh, you should get LaForge and Worf, and Picard's like, nah, I don't want to buy it. That's a weak reason. To me, that's obviously the showrunners giving an excuse to why they couldn't have the main cast members in the show. Where personally, I think it would be better if they just left it and didn't say it at all. Because we all know why. It's because they don't want to do the Next Generation again, and maybe they don't want to pay the same actors, or for whatever reason, they want this to be its own show with a newer cast and whatever. And that's fine. No issues with that. But when you call it out, and Discovery had the problem with this too, by calling out their mistakes. When you call out your mistakes or TV contrivances or things that had to be done for production reasons or plot reasons, it's fine. But when you call them out, and try to excuse it, oh, this is why we're doing it, hink, wink, wink, it just makes it worse because it points attention to it. Like, case in point is like Pike saying, oh, rip all the holographic things off the ship so that way it can just be like the original series Trek that didn't have any holograms. Don't. That makes it worse because you're calling attention to the fact that this is an issue. And I think it's the same thing here by even mentioning Worf and LaForge. You're just calling attention to it. Now, we do know that some of these characters will appear, particularly Riker, so it will be interesting to see the context of that. And it was also interesting they brought in a new Doctor character who was apparently served on the Stargazer with Picard, and that was a cool workaround because that's a way to introduce a new character, new actor we've never seen before. But it has history of Picard, and you buy it because Stargazer. We know the Stargazer. That's something familiar. Now, maybe they'll flesh out, that woman who's pointing a gun at him. Maybe they'll flesh out their backstory and make it a bit more believable. But that wouldn't change the fact. I mean, it might make me accept that character more, but it wouldn't change the fact that this introduction was sloppy. In my opinion, it didn't quite work for me. Another slight issue I had was with the Admiral. And I tried to look it up to see if this is the Admiral Clancy, I think her name was. It was like Tom Clancy? I don't know. But anyway, Admiral Clancy, who... apparently she's like the head of Starfleet in charge of issuing out things. So that's the explanation of why Picard went to her to try to get a ship. Because she's the woman to see. But after all these years in Starfleet, Picard surely has friends that are still in Starfleet. I mean, maybe Riker's retired, but what about Janeway or some of these other admiral dudes, or maybe this random captain, or maybe this random lieutenant, maybe someone we saw on the show, or maybe someone we didn't. Maybe it was someone from the Stargazer, maybe it was someone from Enterprise E after, we saw him after Nemesis. There's got to be somebody that still appreciates him. Why did Picard go to this woman who obviously has it in for him and obviously disagrees with him on the issues? I mean, I know the show wants to be sort of uniform and say all of Starfleet feels this way, which obviously is not the case because Picard didn't feel that way. So if Picard, you can't say, oh, he's a lone wolf, he's a one person who actually wants to stick to the fucking ideals of the Federation and what it should stand for. Bullshit. Now, as I talked about in my previous review, I totally buy that Starfleet would be controlled by fear. Now, this is obviously, of course, an analogy to Trump, Brexit, whatever, which is also things that are happening, and I do buy for the Starfleet universe or the Star Trek universe because of we see nasty admirals. I could have done I was thinking about doing this whole collage of all these clips of these evil admirals, evil captains up to no good. So it's it's not too far-fetched to see that their voices won out in Starfleet. What is far-fetched is that they are the only voices in Starfleet, because there's always the voices for good, always the voices who agreed with Picard. So that's what I don't buy. I buy that this is the current mindset of the majority of Starfleet, of what's controlling mindset of Starfleet, of all the top brass or whatever, but I don't buy that there's nobody in Starfleet who would agree with Picard. In fact, I would say there would at least be a sizable people, because as I said, it's supposed to be an analogy for Trump and Brexit, and there's a sizable portion of the population who don't support, who are actively against Trump and Brexit. In fact, as far as Trump goes, I would argue the majority. It's because the election system is broken as well, the only reason he's the president in the first place, but that's a whole other topic. So I would say the majority of Americans are actually against Trump, and a sizable amount of that majority is strongly opposed to him. So to say that there's not a single person who is opposed to his obviously xenophobic mindset, I just don't buy it, personally. I think that's going too far. But that's just me. Anyway. Anywho, so the rest of let me talk about what I liked about this episode. Mainly, and what I like about the show overall, I saw this in the first episode and I see it in the second episode as well, is that this show's much, much better at doing a modernized, serialized show than Discovery. Now, I like Discovery fine, well and good, but it wasn't the best at doing serialized. You could tell it was trying to fit a Star Trek format into a serialized format, and sometimes it succeeded and sometimes it didn't. Sometimes it was rather clunky. I think Season 1 and Season 2 were sort of struggling to keep that serialized format going. Sometimes it veered off, or you weren't that interested in the main drive of the story. Season 2 is the Red Angel, whatever. Sometimes that wasn't as interesting as it could have been. Sometimes it was just there to be there. Sometimes they kind of ignored it for an episode. Whereas with Picard, we're only 2 episodes in, but I think it's obvious, even in these 2 episodes, they are not trying to be like a modern Star Trek show. They are being a modern Star Trek show. They're not trying to be serialized. They are. Like, the way they do it is seamless. Like, this episode in particular is a really good example, because, as I said, it's one of those link in the chain episodes, and it's much better than the ones Discovery does. I would compare it more to regular modern shows like Game of Thrones, The Expanse, Breaking Bad, what have you, that have Better Call Saul, whatever, that have these kind of episodes. And it feels more like that. It feels like the serialization aspect of the show is working a lot better now. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I enjoyed meeting oh god, I don't have her name in front of me, Daj's sister. Like, Daj is such an easy name to remember, but now she's dead and we have to remember a whole nother name from her sister. Soji, I believe it is. Okay, so Soji, like, her storyline, like, that was interesting, having her meet that hot Romulan, but find out he's working for the Secret Cabal. Now, the Secret Cabal thing, like, that's an interesting aspect as well. Like, I totally buy that Romulans would have a deeper level of Tal Shiar that's even more secret. And I love the Romulans thing. It's like calling it the secret police is redundant, because everything in Romulan society is secret. And that's also another thing I love, that this so far, they are exploring Romulan culture, like, way more than the Next Generation ever did. Because don't get me wrong, I like the Romulans in Next Gen, but they were underdeveloped, and they didn't really get into them the way that, say, for example, Deep Space Nine got into the Cardassians. But now we are seeing that kind of deep level exploration, even though the Romulan Empire is kaput. They had a new name for it, the Romulan Free State, I think it was, which is fitting that it would have taken on a different form after the homeworlds are destroyed. So I love that. I think that all works, like, really well, has me really interested. And as far as this, like, I can't remember the name of the Secret Cabal that was even the deeper level of Tal Shiar. They're obviously going to be the main bad guys. But as soon as I heard about that, I thought, they're probably the ones responsible for that attack on Mars. I mean, that would be kind of obvious if it was the case, but I think it would work for the story, so I don't think they should just not do it because it's the obvious choice, because sometimes the obvious choice is the right choice. But we'll see. And I love, by the way, that the opening sequence, the flashback we got to the Mars, I love that we actually get to see more of that, like see the ground level and how the workers and common workers are interacting with the androids. This is the kind of great detail that they never really had the budget to do on Next Generation. They did a little bit on Voyager, but this is the kind of world building fleshing out that I think this show really succeeds at. More so than previous treks, honestly. I think it really paints a fuller picture, and it really works for me. Like, that opening scene was amazing. The android suddenly turned. I think, like, because in universe, people didn't really know why the rogue synths attacked. I mean, so I was kind of confused about this after the first episode, but it seems like the case that they stopped helping Romulan aid just because their whole thing was hurt. They were hurting and they needed to worry about themselves, and they were more worried about other attacks, so it was more of an inward thing. They didn't necessarily draw a direct line between the attack on Mars and Romulus, but to me, I think it's obvious that one exists. I think Picard speculated there was one. Some people speculate, and this is true to life, because sometimes in real life, terrorist attacks and other attacks happen where you don't really know why. I mean, a lot of cases with terrorists, they want you to know, so they'll make an explanation, a video, or whatever, and a media announcement, so everyone knows why. But it's not always that way. Sometimes attacks happen, and you never really know the real reason why. So I think it really works for the show, and I totally buy it, and I think it's an interesting aspect. So my theory is that it was this deeper level of Telshar, or whatever they're called, that did do this because they did not want the Federation to rescue all these Romulans for whatever reason. Maybe they did because if more Romulans died, they'd be able to put more negative spin on the Federation. Maybe they wanted to keep the Federation the enemies. Maybe they wanted those people to die. I don't know why exactly, but I do have that's my theory, that it's this, thingy. But again, that's kind of the obvious conclusion, so maybe it's going to be more complicated than that. Now, as far as the Borg go, like, I don't know, this is more of like extra stuff I got from reading articles and shit, because we know Hugh's going to be in the show, so it does seem to imply that this Borg ship might be Hugh's ship, because it's definitely a derelict ship that the dude, the hot Romulan, I can't remember his name, that he says the Borg don't give a shit about. They've already disconnected it, so there's no risk of the collective. But I thought he said that the Borgs on that ship were already disconnected from the collective before their ship got damaged. I mean, I might be misremembering or something, but that would hint that this Borg ship is Hugh's ship. And since we know Hugh's going to be in the show, I think that's kind of possible. I guess, I don't know, because other people speculate that Hugh's going to team up with 7-9 to try to free these Borg, so it's totally different Borg, but I don't know. I think that'd be pretty interesting. And of course, as I said, I think when this episode ended, I was just like, oh, that's it? Oh no, it can't end it there, god damn you. Because it doesn't seem like that much was developed in it. Like, I wanted more, but that's a good sign, because that shows that they had me hooked. That shows that the overall storytelling is working. So overall, yeah, this is great. So anyway, my rating for what's this called again? Maps and Legends out of 10. I'm gonna give this a 7. Very good. As I said, it has some slight issues with it, and it didn't really stand out as like a great episode on its own. But it's like some of the parts, like, it's greater, whatever. It's a link in a chain, and in that case, it does its job well. I'm still hooked on this show. I still overall think the show's doing a much better job than Discovery at being a modern Star Trek show, and I'm all in, and I really, really can't wait to see more. So anyway, that is it for my review of Maps and Legends. Be sure to check back here every week as I continue to do episode reviews for Picard, and also check out my channel as I review other shows like The Expanse and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.